Hello, everyone, and welcome to another amazing episode of HBCU Highlights. My name is Andrea Evans, and I'm here with my fabulous co-host, Ashley Deadwyler-Jones. And we have an amazing Morehouse alum to spotlight today, Mr. Torarie Durden. So Torarie Durden is going to tell his story to and through Morehouse, all the great things that he's doing now in the community. But currently, he's Chief Marketing Officer at Milderm, a CBD company. So I know that has your ears perking, like everybody's talking about CBD. That's so hot. Torarie Durden, thank you so much for joining us today at HBCU Highlights.
Well, thank you both for having me. It's an honor to be selected, and I've been following you. The stories have been great, so hopefully we can live up to the great bar you set already.
Well, thank you so much. You have an amazing story. So let's just start at the beginning. Yeah. 1994. Many of you have watched these interviews. You all know that I'm a NASA Y scholar. Now, Torarie was a NASA McNair scholar. And so, Torarie, tell us more about why you even chose Morehouse in the first place, because you're a basketball star, so I know you had plenty of options.
Hi, well, thanks for that question. Historically, Black colleges have been at the kind of focal point of my life, like three very important times, even before I chose to go to Morehouse. Growing up in deep South Georgia, not Atlanta, like really South Georgia, small town, 8,000 people. If you count the cows and the chickens, it's like 9,000, right? There was literally a railroad tracks that ran through town that separated the Black side from the white side. I was in the 7th grade when my high school integrated their proms, and it had stopped having 2 homecoming queens. I was good in math growing up and good in basketball, and those 2 things don't always go together well for either the Black community or the white community. And so when I was in the 7th grade, I attended a basketball camp at a historically Black college, Fort Valley State University, and it was great because I got a little bit of success. And if anybody's been an athlete and you leave your hometown, you have a little bit of success, you kind of walk a bit taller, right? After my freshman year, I didn't want to crop tobacco and pick cotton in the summers. That was literally what I did in the summertime. I didn't want to do that. It's the closest thing you'll ever experience to slavery that still exists. So I went to a summer enrichment program at Southern University. That's the first time I met a Black professor in the sciences, right? Admittedly, my sophomore year of high school, I went over to Florida A&M for homecoming, and I just fell in love, both with the school, and I just kept falling in love. Like every time I walked down the street, I would fall in love with someone else. And I remember going back and telling my mother that I want to go to college. And it was the amazing benefit of a gentleman who worked for Morehouse, who was not in admissions, who drove by my hometown, saw me one day. I was working in a clothing store selling bathing suits, gave me a book called A Candle in the Dark, and he stayed in contact with me for 2.5 years. He never asked me my GPA. He never asked me about basketball. He just called to check on me. So by the time I was ready to graduate from high school, that gentleman worked at Morehouse, and it was an unbelievable story, but he was the impetus as why I chose to go to Morehouse, because outside of any accolades or awards, that dude just was nice to me for 2.5 years, and he met me while I was working in a bathing suit store on the interstate. So that was my first inclination. I chose Morehouse for a lot of reasons. I'm sure we'll get into it, but it just felt very, very comfortable and real for me, and that's what I was looking for at the time.
Wow, that's an amazing story, and it really says a lot about the Morehouse brotherhood. Yeah. Now, I want to learn more about that story and finally what it was like when you got a chance to visit Morehouse, the feeling that you felt, and how you probably were embraced by many more brothers that wanted to take you to the next level. What was that like?
Yeah, it was great. I had great role models and mentors in my hometown, coaches, uncles, aunts. There was a single mom situation. My mom was making like $7, $8 an hour. So paying for college was as much of a mountain as telling me I was going to go to the moon, right? But like Black colleges had such an indelible mark to me because every teacher I had who was Black went to a HBCU, right? And every time I had a little bit of success, it was always about people who had looked like me, who was also attempting to do more, pouring into me at a time they didn't have to. So when that gentleman reached out to me about going to Morehouse my senior year, I had at that time over $150,000 in scholarship money. Because, and I say this, and I say that number on purpose, because no child, especially no Black child, should pay for college, because there was a woman named Marianne Reagans, a Florida A&M graduate, who appeared in Parade magazine. And if either of you played sports, you know the Sunday newspaper, you had to look through it to find your scores. But in Parade magazine was Marianne Reagans, and she wrote a book probably in 1991 about how to get enough money for scholarships. And I read that book and I applied for everything on the planet. I mean, I applied for the Daughters of the Confederacy Award. I applied for the Women of the World Award. I applied for everything. So luckily, as grace would have it, you know, I was able to pay for college. But then when Mr. Wallace, that was his name, asked me about going to Morehouse, and I came up to visit doing a spring program, and I sat with men who had on suits. And I heard these unbelievable gentlemen get up and give speeches. And I heard about the physics department and all those things. And they brought the basketball coach over, and they didn't even recruit me. And I was like, I'll just walk on for free. And they were like, yeah. And all that was great. But I will tell you this, Ashley. When Mr. Wallace walked me over to the admissions office to introduce me, he started selling me to the admissions director. Give this kid a chance. He's a great person. You should give him a shot. This and another. The admissions director opens up my folder, looks at me, looks at the folder, looks at me again. He says, you have a very unique spelling of your name. I was like, yes. He said, are you the same Torarie who is this, and I was like, yes. He was like, don't you already have, like, and I was like, yes. He said, so would you even consider coming to Morehouse? I was like, absolutely. He was like, wow. I was like, because y'all treated me like a young man and y'all showed me respect and courtesy when you didn't know all these things about me and you gave me a shot. So absolutely, I'm coming here. And that was the body of what Morehouse is, pouring into people regardless of, you know, their recognition or name. They just gave me so much feeling of comfort and respect. And it was early in my life and I was desperate for it, right? I was looking for it with such a gravitas, and the way they did that made me fall in love with the school. It also helped that night they had a step show, and then all the ladies from Spelman came over and all the people from Clark came over. And I was like, I think I called that night. I said, Mom, I'm not coming back home. I'm staying here. I'm not coming back home. So that does help. It does help that there's that Atlanta University Center male-female ratio that supports, you know, young men wanting to go to college. So.
What an incredible story, Tori. I mean, just to hear you say you're in your 40s and to talk about in 7th grade that your school basically had a black dance and a white dance, you know, and this is...
Ours is at, just to be clear, the black prom was at the elementary school cafeteria and the white prom was at the country club, right? So just to understand, I was the first black valedictorian in my school's history still. And the challenge of that was that it is still like all the things we're experiencing right now in culture are very real. If you get on I-75 and leave Atlanta and drive 2.5 hours south, it's still very much there. Sorry, I didn't mean to say.
No, it's an amazing story. And that's exactly why we spotlight graduates like yourself, because we met you at Morehouse. So it's like nobody really knows your story. You don't ask people why. And so your story is going to resonate with another student that's an athlete that's trying to decide, should they go to this D1 college or should they choose Morehouse, or the engineering student who's saying, I can't play sports and do engineering. So tell us more about that. What did you major in at Morehouse, and how did you manage to pursue this STEM major and STEM degree and balance that with playing basketball?
Yeah, well, Andrea, you know that we met the pre-summer before freshman year. I call it nerd camp. Like we graduated from high school and then came to college early. That's not normal behavior, right? For me, it was super important to leave South Georgia because, like, to know where I'm from is actually to know me. Like, my best friend was, you know, a drug dealer, right? You know, my senior class project was building a daycare in our school so that young girls could get back to school after they had children. And so I graduated on a Tuesday and I think I left on Sunday, right? And I get around these guys because I thought, admittedly, I thought I was hot stuff when I got there, right? I mean, you graduate from senior year in high school. I thought I was it, right? I was the smart black kid. And I sat in that summer program and I met my guys who are lifelong friends to this day. And this guy was like, yeah, I got a perfect score on my math SAT. And I was like, oh, really? Wow, okay. He was like, yeah, I've done research on quantum mechanics when I was in high school. And I'm like, oh, really? Like, wow, like that's how we doing this? And we got our backsides handed to us that summer, right? Those professors beat us down halfway through. But then about something changed. The light bulb moment came on. Like, I can do this. Like, even from a small, I can do this. I can do this advanced calculus. I can do this. So I majored in applied physics and minored in math. I also have a degree in electrical engineering from Georgia Tech as part of the dual degree program that you mentioned. And I have a master's degree in electrical engineering with a focus on telecommunications, also from Tech. And I ended up going back to business school a couple of years later to get an MBA. And all of that was because that summer I got my head beat in, but they didn't put their arm around me, right? They put their arm around you like, no, you can do this. You just, you need to study for 2 hours, not an hour, right? And you need to not see that other Black male as a competitor, but as an ally, right? And you need to ask me questions. And that was the unbelievable thing about our schools. Like, they were teaching us the meticulousness of it, higher level physics and math, but they were doing it with their arm around our shoulder. And you just don't get that everywhere, right? And so, yeah, I'm a physics major. I don't really use it much right now, but I still like the problem-solving approach. My boys think it's funny. My sons think it's funny because I can do math quickly in my head when they want to like buy new toys. But it was a great experience that I would not pass up for the life of me.
Now, what about your basketball career?
Oh, yeah.
In college? Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. And because I mean, right now I feel like that's been a hot topic. Whether some brothers should choose D1 or should we just be focusing on HBCUs for our athletes?
Actually, I have a very strong stance on that, not just because of my time at Morehouse, but after I left Morehouse and came back to work, I worked for a company called Russell Athletic. And we were a uniform maker. We also owned Spalding basketball, and we owned every sports equipment in the country. And I saw something super impactful about the world of college sports. So when I got to Morehouse, I did have opportunities to play basketball. I played for 1 year at Morehouse. I walked on. I sat behind an All-America, D2 All-American, and 2 D2 All-Americans, but I was the 3rd leading scorer on the basketball team my freshman year. And I thought, like, hey, I could do this. And I have this picture I posted on social media of my first game. And I always talk about how incredibly terrified I was. Like, you know how to play the game, but it's a different stage. Everybody came from different backgrounds. They were this and that. And I'm sitting here like a poor kid from South Georgia. But I said, basketball is objective. You get me on the court, I get you on the court. I don't care where you came from. Like you about to get got, right? And that was saving grace for me, right? Because I loved it and it was a goal. But I stopped playing basketball because I had a head injury and some other things. And then I really enjoyed college as well. And I always say that for young people who are thinking about athletics as the route to college. Hold on 1 second. Hey, buddy.
You come downstairs now.
Okay, I will, buddy. Can I finish this up really quick? I have to do this really quick. Go get mommy for me, okay? Okay, because I'm doing this interview. Okay?
So we love it. Look, Tori, since your son came in and you do have 2 sons.
Yeah.
I'm sure you are their role model. He's ready for you to play with him this very second. Yeah. Are they going to go to Morehouse?
I mean, they may not go, but that's where my money is going, right? I've explained to them very clearly, like, you could choose other options. Here's what I learned about that. To have pride and respect for your school amongst Black people is a novel thing. I also went to Harvard and I went to Dartmouth. People who go to Harvard and Dartmouth don't have any question marks about telling their young people, you should go follow in my footsteps. I also went to Georgia Tech. Everybody walks around with flags and saying, I want my son to go to Georgia Tech. I want my sons to go to Morehouse. I want them to feel loved. I want them to be challenged. I want them to have to learn how to debate and argue with their friends. And especially in this time period right now, I want them to learn diversity the way I learned diversity at Morehouse, which was, I believe this concept. When you walk in a room, you size up the room. You check out people of the same race as you, and you check out people of the same sex as you, right? Not go to a place where everybody is the same sex as you, everybody is the same race as you. Now you got to get to know them, right? Now you got to talk to them. And also my boys only know people like Uncle Chima and Uncle Merrill and Uncle Zay and Uncle Brian, so they see these men who've done amazing things, and that's who they like, yo, I want to be like Uncle Chima. I want to be like Uncle Merrill. I want to be like, and so it's part of our piece. So that's my goal. That's my hope. That's where my money is being saved to pay for. If they choose otherwise, I go back to that point I made where you can find scholarship money yourself, but mine is going there. So.
Yeah, and you're grooming them for that excellence, even for the individuals that they spend time with today. Now, when you think back to Morehouse, is there a moment? I know there were many, but is there like something that was very memorable, that was game changing, that kind of really pointed you in a direction, that maybe you wouldn't have gone in otherwise?
Yeah, you're right. There were several. One was freshman year, right? I mean, we had a good time, right? We did, and I was having a really good time. And the captain of the basketball team came to me. He said, "Torarie, I see that you guys have made a flyer for a party in your dorm room." And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "That's just not smart." He's like, he said, "That's just not a smart thing to do." And I was like, "Yeah, but we're freshmen. We should do this stuff." He was like, "No, that's not smart." And I was like, "You're right." And he and I are still friends to this day. But have you ever had somebody who didn't tell you were great and just came and said like, "Yeah, that's not a smart thing you're doing"? That mattered to me a lot, right? Because I was really on my own in college. And I knew that if I didn't do well, I had to go back to those tobacco fields and the steel factories. So that made a difference. The second thing was, and I would say this, there are two unbelievable mentors that I was graced to find when I was at Morehouse. One is a Spelman alum. She was an executive at Coke. I call her my second mom. And that woman poured more into me than most people I can ever, credit. And the other one's a Morehouse alum. His name is Dean Blocker. He worked at Morehouse. Dean Blocker passed in 2003. It's probably the first time I've actually seen that many men at a funeral, that many men cry. Because Dean Blocker helped me learn that you could be around guys and talk trash and have a drink and still go off and expect to be the head of a medical school or become a doctor. And he was one of my best friends in the world, but he was also lots of people's best friends. The woman, her name is Helen Price. She's on the board of trustees of Spelman. She just gave me opportunities. And I'll tell you, Ashley and Andrew, I would be in the room with people who had privilege and esteem and all these things, and I didn't, right? And she would put me there. She would make me go. She would, matter of fact, no, she didn't make me go. She would invite me and I would gladly accept. But she just kind of, she had a younger son, but I became that person that she would just give opportunities to. And she told me both Helen and Dean Blocker said something very important to me. If I crack the door open, your job is to walk through. So keep walking through the doors. So those two people kind of reaching in, grabbing me by my neck, and even my captain of my basketball team grabbing me by my neck are always those times that I look back where I could have gone very differently, and they kind of pulled me toward a path that they thought more of me than I thought of myself, which I think is an important quality.
I love that, Torarie, and I love that, like you said, when the door is open, all you have to do is walk through it and show up and show out. And you did that. That's a testament to you doing that. Yeah. And you not only did that all the way through Morehouse, Georgia Tech, Dartmouth, Harvard, my goodness. Let's talk about what you do to give back to others. You've been opening the door and paving the way for many others as a mentor and as a community leader. Tell us more about what you do in the community.
Yeah, I think community has concentric circles around it, around yourself, around your house, around the people you want to impact, right? So, and I thank you for saying that. But I will tell you, my most favorite graduation wasn't any of mine. It was graduation 2001 and graduation 2019, both from Spelman. In 2001, my two cousins, both from Adel, Georgia, graduated from Spelman. And that was a result of them doing really great and working hard, but it was also a result of me going down there and saying, "Hey, you need to come here, and we're gonna figure out how you're gonna get here. And I don't care if that means you got to live with me. I don't care if that means we got to bar. You want to do it." And they both graduated, went on to graduate work. They're two of my best friends and cousins. And I have the only picture I have up of graduation in my house is actually of their graduation and me, because I loved everything about what they did, right? The second one was last year, 2019, a young lady who was a part of KIP. And KIP is a charter school network that takes Black and brown kids and tell them that they're going to graduate from high school, go off to college, and they're going to go get through college and become exceptional. And it was I was a part of the founding board in Atlanta that started a new charter high school called KIPP Atlanta Collegiate. And it's amazing how life gets thrown at you, right? A good friend of mine from my days in college, he didn't go to school with us, had a daughter really early in life. And his daughter was in that freshman year class at KIPP Atlanta Collegiate. She actually calls me Uncle Torarie. And she went through high school. She got into Spelman, went through Spelman and graduated. So when I give back to these programs like KIPP or, Harvard Diversity Debate Project or my hometown, because I have a scholarship funded there that helps young people, those are cool to say, but when you see people walk across the stage and start crying, and I don't mean regular cry, I mean those ugly cries and mama, we made it and this, that, and other, and you're a part of that, that matters. So for me, helping my local community in Adel, and we're doing something really cool down there right now, helping KIPP, helping the Harvard Diversity Debate Project, but also helping kids play sports. Like sports saved my life in a small town, right? And so I'm really involved in this program called PlayWorks, which helps young people learn active play as a form of conflict resolution, right? Don't get into a fight, go play a good game of dodgeball, right? Or like don't get mad at your teacher, challenge them to a game of hopscotch. It's stuff like that that I think all of us are doing to really pour back in based on what we care about, right? And so that's been my thing.
Torarie, that's awesome that you continue to give back in your community. I mean, I know it feels good to give, but golly, everything that you're pouring back to others, I'm sure that they are looking at you as that mentor, just as you have been mentored by so many. So thanks so much for what you're doing for so many of our youth to get to where you are today. Now, speaking of getting to where you are today, what's it like being the chief marketing officer of a major company, and what was that journey getting to the point where you are today?
Yeah, it's hard. It's really, really hard, right? After business school and working in corporate America and a couple of jobs, it was a lot of aspiration for titles, right? I wanted to be the chief this, VP of this, and I didn't really feel fulfilled at what I was doing. I also started my own consulting firm, and I sucked at it. Right. So a lot of times people will go on this ride and tell you about how I did this great. And then I got to the next one. I had a bunch of failures, right? Startup that failed, a consulting firm that failed, but I had to accept what I love doing. Right. And one of the things that I realized I loved was the intersection of healthcare, intersection of consumer products, and also growing a business. Right. I am a person that is not a tinkered widget maker entrepreneur. I like to take something small and make it big. So I discovered CBD as a derivative of cannabinoid and hemp. And yes, it's that cannabis, right? I was never a partaker of it. So my friends think it is utterly hilarious that I am in this role because they know how adamant I was against it throughout college and my adult life. But I really found that for many people who have aches, pains caused by inflammation, CBD, if done correctly, could be an unbelievably healthy alternative to steroids and pain medications and pharmaceutical drugs. So I joined this industry about 2 years ago, and it's really a business, right? Even though it has CBD on it, it's a business. It's about retail sales. It's about e-commerce. It's about packaging. It's about marketing, all the things I love, but just we're doing it as we create a whole new industry. I'm not a grower. I appreciate people who grow. I don't want to have a dispensary. I think that's a great model for many people. We make a consumer product that's available in Dick's and Sporting Goods and GNC and 7-Eleven that literally is a pain cream that's going to help you live a better life. And I love doing that. And I love doing it for the fun part, but I also love doing it because my mom uses it for her carpal tunnel syndrome, right? And so, but actually it's hard because people love talking about entrepreneurship stories and they want to hear the awards and success, but it's 16, 18-hour days. It's not knowing how. It's raising capital. It is, convincing a retailer to take your product. It's where with inventory levels. But we built for this, right? We are literally built to be the ones that help shape a new industry, and that's why this is fun. But it's tiring. The bags you see under my eyes are from lack of sleep sometimes. So.
Oh, I don't know about that, Torarie. I was just going to say, you don't look like what you've been through, to be saying 16, 18-hour days. I don't know. I want to see proof of that. I do
The
want
cream
to.
works great for underarm, but for skin as well. That's why. So
Yeah, I was gonna say you're probably using the product, so that you look good. And I wanted to say to you, as the chief marketing officer, marketing, you can have a good product, but if you can't market it, if nobody knows about it, forget. You can have the best CBD cream. So give us a tip, probably just one. I know it's a lot of things you have to do to market a product, but give us like one tip of how you marketed the product to get your quote unquote big break with the product, because a lot of people have products and they're selling them out their kitchens and garages, but you listed 7-Eleven and GNC and some big stores. How did that happen?
I think that's a great point. I know there are a lot of entrepreneurs in our groups, and marketing is one of those terms that everybody knows, but may not think about it from a disciplined approach. Like everybody knows marketing, right? Just post on social media, just do a TV ad. What are you talking about, right? I think there are three things I always tell people from a marketing perspective. Is one, know who your absolute bullseye user is. Okay. Now that could be different from your customer, but who do you really want to be the person that is, transacting with you about the product? Because if you don't know that and you just kind of flailing at the wind, you hoping for the best, right? And again, not your only customer, but your bullseye customer. Okay. The second thing is, if it was easy, everybody would do it. Right? So you got to test and then retest. You got to throw something out there. You can't have a short-term mindset about success when you're talking about marketing. A great marketing campaign may have a 3 to 5% conversion rate. That means 95% of the people said no, right? So you really got to just, know that you're testing and retesting this. And the third thing that I say is that, and this is going to sound weird, but like start with what you know, right? There's so many people who, and I do a lot of work with small brands, helping them think about their approach. And I'm like, what do you know? Have you gone to your first 20 people that you know in your phone and told them that you have this thing and you want them to be their customer? Because if you don't believe enough in your product to ask your friends to try it, right? How could you tell the world? Because what your friends and your first circle of people will do is give you feedback. And then you have to go and twist and adjust the story based on that feedback. So unlike other things like that have discrete answers like physics, right? You and I both know you do a physics problem, there's an answer, right? At the end. With marketing, you have to go test and get feedback from your circle and then adjust. And if you don't, you'll be talking about new Coke like 86, like when new Coke started that. They're like, oh, we messed up, we got to switch, right? Or you'll be trying to market. So that's my view of it, right? It's also, it's a discipline. It's not, it's an art and a science. So when all your friends tell you they know marketing, I have to sit and look and I'll be like, really? Tell me about it. And because everybody knows the term, but when you start doing it, it's much more of a discipline. And but this has been fun. I will tell you this. Highest index use of our product is actually with Black women. Do you know why? They care about natural products. They're managing more stress and strain. They're trying to stay active. They can't stop for pain. They have been kind of exposed to cannabis at some point, so they've heard of it, but now they're the chief medical officer of their household. Like both of you make all the most, if not all the medical decisions about your house, but you also want to continue to look youthful and be vibrant and do things. So we really targeted a lot of our new campaigns in this space around Black women. And that takes some guts because I'm the Black person in the company, right? So I tell people that like we're fertile ground even for base level consumer products, but if you do it in a systematic way, it still works. So.
Well, Tori, I think you have a new customer right here. These knees, these basketball knees of mine, ooh, I could use some CBD cream. So we will definitely talk online. I'm sure you'll be able to tell us all where to find it.
And I will send you some, and I'll also give you a code that you can give to your audience if they want to buy the product at a reduced rate. Because like the last thing I need is people like being in pain and somebody like me working in this company and them not getting to use the product for at least cheaper than what they would have to buy it in the store. So.
Right. And I mean, you've had such an amazing journey, and I'm just so proud of how far you've come and the things that you've accomplished and all that all the people you've touched and given back to. If you had a chance to reach back and talk to I guess you were about 17, 18 years old coming into the house. Yeah. What type of advice would you give yourself back then? Or what
I would say you belong, because I had terrible self-esteem when I got to college. I mean, I faked it for a long time, right? Because I had this unbelievable fear of like people finding out, like the emperor didn't have any clothes on and this and the other. So it was a very strong sense of you belong, right? The second one was, and this is actually related to my wife, who's a Spelman grad, right? I tell people, like, go back, go to homecoming. It's good for the soul, right? I had been through a lot of life experiences, not failed, but not great first relationships and things like that. And it was probably 2005, 2006. I was, back at homecoming, and I bumped into my now wife, and we were talking, and she was like, I remember you from freshman year. And I was like, yeah, but I'm not a freshman in college anymore, right? Right? So it's very important to go back and for people to see you as you mature, right? And then the third thing was what I said earlier. If somebody slides the door open a little bit, go ahead and walk through. I mean, you may mess up, but you're still there. Like, you're in the room. Like, ball out. Like, do what you can, and then take the next step, right? And then take the next step. I mean, if you think about all of our cohorts of friends, right? Undergrad wasn't their last degree, right? They went to Wall Street. They went to like law school. They went to medical school. They're doing crazy, great, wonderful things now. They have capacity. So they just kept taking those steps. The last thing I would say is this. I would also tell myself, like, study before you invite people over to your dorm room. Because freshman year, I got caught a bunch of times coming out of practice, still needing to study. All the ladies over at Spelman and Clark, all the other people had already studied, and then they were just hanging out. And I'm like, hey, look, I got this electromagnetic theory test tomorrow. I need y'all to bounce. And they were like, no, we here, we good. So find your study habits so that when you get back into the dorm room, you're not caught up like that. So.
Hey, I'm laughing because Ashley, like Tori said, we literally graduated from high school, and I was like you, Tori, probably 2 days later, got in the car and just could not wait to get to Atlanta. And we were the Wise Scholars, and they were the McNair Scholars, so he's right. For the first couple of weeks, it was just like we knew they were there, but we couldn't meet them. And they kept telling us, the guys at Morehouse are there. And like you said, it was school, it was college. Like, we were thrown into college, and you weren't the first, like you said, first valedictorian, the smartest in your class. Everybody was like that. But we were just so fortunate to have a good group of friends, just the McNair Scholars, the Wise Scholars, and we had so much fun together just that summer. And we were so fortunate to then come to college together. We already kind of had our crew, and I'm laughing because, like Tori said, Chima and just the whole McNair's crew of 1994, they're like brothers to us. We pushed each other and we had classes together. And I'm so proud of you, Tori, to see where you've come from and where we've all grown to. Like, we had so much fun and we partied hard, but we worked hard. Yeah. And so I want to just thank you for taking time to join us today. But before we let you go, I do want to talk about some of those challenges that you've had. So you talked about relationships and business and different things that you've done, but you've made it. Obviously you're sitting here and you're still standing. So let's talk about health challenges that you had, because I think people can learn and, be inspired by your story. So tell us, please, about that.
Yeah. So, this is, I love my family and my sons, and I was working on kind of legacy building. And I had spoken to my insurance agent about expanding my life insurance policy programming a bit. And cause I got these two boys, and they're like everything, to me. And I was going to get a health exam around the life insurance policy. And probably starting at age 38, I started taking that test that men don't like taking in the doctor's office, where the doctor puts on a glove and puts their finger out and tells you to bend over. And I was like, you really have to do that? And so probably by the age 41, 42, some of my test results came back with abnormal numbers. And I went through probably 4 months of testing, and then, no, that wasn't right. But either way, the weekend of our 20th year college reunion, as I and others had helped plan our 20th reunion, and we were worried about barbecues and dressing up, I found out that I had early stage prostate cancer. And it was a shock to my system. All right. And, but we still had reunion and all that stuff, and nobody really knew. And I was terrified. And I went to doctor after doctor after doctor after that. I went to 4 different doctors. First doctor wanted to do a laser robotic surgery. Andrea, you know, being an engineer, if you put laser and robot together, that's not a simple surgery, right? Right. I went to another doctor. He was telling me about seeds, but he said if I've been planted the seeds, I would emit low dose radiation and that would put my kids in danger. So I was like, I can't do that. And then they were talking about proton therapy and this and another. I had gone to 4 or 5 different doctors. So my head was swimming with information. So, that woman that I mentioned, Helen, I was talking to her about something else and I broke down and started crying. She was like, are you okay? What's wrong? And I was like, well, I got to tell you something, this and the other. And she's like, hold on. I told her, she hung up the phone, and 5 minutes later, her husband called me and said, I want you, I'm also a Morehouse alum, and said, I want you to go visit this doctor. He said, you can't get in for a month. I'm about to call him right now. He's a doctor here too. And he got me into this doctor who basically saved my existence, right? He brought me back. He talked to me about health. He talked to me about eating right, all that stuff. And he said, you can beat this. And so Morehouse and Spelman came back into the fold because 2 months later, I told people, no, 3 months later. And my Spelman sisters who in our class were hot. They were mad. They were angry that I would keep something like that. And they were like, how in the world, why would you not do that? Why'd you tell us this and other? And they just kind of wrapped their arms around me. They wrapped their arms around my wife. They made sure my boys were okay. And probably a month or so after homecoming that year, I went through high dose radiation treatment, which is basically like playing 10 games of basketball, getting the flu, getting a bad cold, and then getting beat up, all smashed together, right? And for 4 or 5 months, you know, I dropped a lot of weight. I was struggling. But here's the beautiful thing about that, right? You get through it, right? I'm 44 years old. My scores are better. So I tell people about it because we all know people who are 44, 45, 46. I will tell you this fun thing that's super important. That's why going to a doctor of color sometimes matters, because the doctor said something very important to me. He said, hey, I know you're scared because you don't like people playing around in that area, and I know what you're worried about. I was like, what's that, doc? He was like, you know, you don't want to lose I said, you're exactly right. I don't want to lose the ability to do anything that I'm able to do right now. And he was like, I'm going to come up with a solution that's going to help you. And that's what he did. So I tell people this, you know, that doesn't kill us, makes a stronger argument. It's one thing to have it on a poster or on a picture in your wall. It's another thing when you're laying there and, you know, they're talking to you about radiation and treatment at 42 years old and all that stuff. But here's the good part. I'm around. I'm good. I eat differently. I rode my bicycle today for like 12, 15 miles. You know, we can beat these things. Early detection is key. Make sure every man in your life go gets tested, whether they like it or not. And every woman, you better go get tested as well. And, you know, be there for each other, right? Because mine is a hopeful, positive story. I plan on being at our 25th reunion. I plan on being at our 30th. I plan on being at our 40th. I plan on being there. But when life smacks you like that, it was great. It was wonderful. It was unbelievable for people who had known me since I was 18 years old, right? To say, I got you, right? And that's what matters. And I'll remind you all of this. Many of the people that I knew from our class, I knew them because, you remember a few years ago when we raised a scholarship in Myron Burney's name? Yeah. Like, look at what kind of people we are. Like, a group of people got together and endowed $100,000 worth of money to a college in the name of one of our fallen classmates. You know, when I got sick, you know, people rallied around me and made sure I was okay. You know, and that's the unbelievable benefit to me of going to Morehouse and going to an HBCU. I could have been okay at any place. If I would have just gone to Georgia Tech, I probably would have graduated. But I don't have that. I wouldn't have had that love, right? I wouldn't have had that community. I wouldn't have had that arm around my shoulder that now we are all trying to put arms around other people this time. Last point I'll make to y'all is this. Black men are an endangered species, right? So isn't it great to have, and Black women are overworked and overburdened. isn't it great to have a place that we can call home where you don't have to explain that to folks? You can walk down the tailgate tent and somebody can tell you they're up for a judgeship and give you a plate of ribs. Like, you don't get that everywhere, right? Right? Like, I'm going to be a judge and you want some of these ribs I got. Like, you don't get both of those things, And so that was a great blessing for me. That's why I'm very proud of the fact that I went to Morehouse. I would expect my sons to go. Thankful to the two of you for doing this. And if I can do anything to help people, we're going to try to do it.
Thanks so much, Torarie, for being so courageous. And I mean, you've touched not just your Morehouse brothers that are watching this and your Spelman sisters that are watching this, but so many people that tune in. I mean, your courage to be so transparent is everything. So thank you for that. And if folks want to follow you, if they want to donate, to one of your nonprofits that you put forth, or just to learn more about your journey, how can they find you?
Yeah, I mean, I try to make this easy with a lot of different things. Just email me. I'm super simple. It's Torarie Durden at Gmail, Torarie, or on LinkedIn. Trust me, if you put in that name, there's not going to be a second one. It's only me, right? So reach out. I'll give you my information if people want to talk, because this whole notion about nonprofits and help is one thing, but that health thing is one that I found a lot of people need just somebody else to talk to, right? All right, and give you my direct information on that. But just reach out. Like, I have a firm rule of just return the damn call, right? Because people reach out for lots of different things, and even if it's 15 seconds, I'll try. Because that guy in 1992 who rode through Adel, Georgia, and gave me that book, that dude did not have to stop, right? And so I can't do it perfectly. I'm not gonna do it all the time. I'm not trying to be 100% at it, but if I can do a little bit, we're gonna try to rock with it. So.
Well, Torarie, thank you so much for joining us today at HBCU Highlights. I loved everything about this interview. It was so inspiring to hear your story. And thank you so much for keeping that door open. I'm glad somebody held the door open for you. You walked through it. You're holding it open for somebody else. And that kind of pay it forward attitude is contagious, right? So the people that you are helping, your cousins, those graduates that have actually been able to experience the AUC because you did it. We're so proud of you, and you are a trailblazer, and we're so thankful that you are our class of 98 Morehouse brother. And we want to thank you for being here at HBCU Highlights. Thank you everybody for watching, and for more amazing interviews like this, check out hbcuhighlights.com and like and subscribe to our podcast. Thank you all so much.